There's joy in the journey, peace in the climb. Even in the waiting, love's right on time. So breathe in the beauty, let go of the fear. You're not alone, joy is here.
Hey friends, welcome back to Joy in the Journey, a place where we find beauty in brokenness, strength in the struggle, and always joy in the journey. I am your host, Jaja Fortuna, and I am so very grateful to have you here with me today. Hola mi gente, bienvenidos a Gozo en el Viaje, donde encontramos belleza en el quebrantamiento, fuerza en la lucha y siempre gozo en el camino. Yo soy tu anfitriona, Jaja Fortuna, y estoy súper agradecida por tenerlos aquí conmigo hoy. Y quiero recordarles que pueden activar los subtítulos en YouTube y las instrucciones estarán en las notas o en los comentarios. Oi pessoal, bem-vindos à Alegria na Jornada, onde encontramos beleza na dor, força na batalha e sempre alegria na jornada. Eu sou sua anfitriã, Jaja Fortuna. Gostaria de lhe recordar que podem ativar os subtítulos no YouTube e para as instruções vejam nos comentários ou nas notas. So before I get into today's topic, I just want to acknowledge the fact that I took a break last week. I was supposed to release this episode last week, but I didn't. Instead, I took a break. And maybe that's the most honest way to begin this conversation, actually, with a pause. Because sometimes before we share, we need to just sit. We need to just feel and grieve and rest. And I was gracious enough with myself to do that. That's what I needed the most, just to rest. Not because I'm lazy, not because I don't care. I care about you guys and the message that I share, and I care about this so much because I feel this is a testimony that I desire to have and to share to where it touches many hearts and allows people to actually seek healing for themselves as I am healing with you guys. And I also needed rest because feeling is hard. As you guys know, I'm a big feeler, and sometimes that can get hard, especially when what you feel is still healing within. So I took a break, and in the break I remembered you are allowed to feel without explaining. You are allowed to hurt, to feel the pain without apologizing. You are allowed to take time, especially when your heart needs it the most. This episode today is different, like I said. It's not about answers. It's simply about honesty. Today, I want to talk about something I never imagined would be part of my life. In the past, I never imagined this would be part of my story. But the reality is that the naughty word that I used to hear, divorce, is part of my past. And honestly, just saying the word felt like shame at first when I was going through it all. Like I had failed God or disappointed the people who believed in me in my past partner. I didn't know how to talk about it because divorce is one of those things people often whisper. Unless you live in Western culture that is, that is constantly, celebrating divorce. Just leave if you're not happy. Don't fight for your marriage if you're not happy. But in the culture in which I come from, in the culture in which I am in the Christian culture also, divorce felt like a dirty word. A word you whispered. A dirty word people don't know how to sit with. And I was just emotionally exhausted, drained, numb sometimes. I didn't even know how to pray, just, breathe, or even cry sometimes. Let me tell you, I did cry quite a bit, but there were times that I felt like a knot in my throat that did not even allow me to cry. One of the hardest part about divorce wasn't even the paperwork. It wasn't the fact that I was truly grieving losing that person. It was actually grieving the dreams that once were. The image I had of my future almost 10 years ago, I had to truly grieve. Because back then it was our future. And one day it was just gone. And this is even harder to say, the dream of having children, of raising a family one day, out the door. Growing old, the dream, of growing old, it was also out the door, all gone. And yes, it hurt more than I can explain. And I will never understand how to fully explain it. One of my good friends from church, she started a group for individuals that are either going through divorce or have gone through divorce. And I just briefly mentioned to her, I am so glad that you did that. I am so glad that you started that group, because I wish I had that group when I was going through it all. Because that is not something that anyone should go through it alone. That is not something that people should grieve without community. To be completely honest, I, for the longest time, blamed my ex-husband for the infidelity. I won't sugarcoat that. But I also blame myself for giving so many chances, for trying to hold something together that was already unraveling. And then I blamed God. And that actually makes me sad. Quietly, I would ask, why didn't you stop this? Why did you let me love someone who would break me? But even in my blaming, God never left. God met me in my most broken places, in my most inner being. The year was 2016. The divorce became final. I was heartbroken. The year was 2017. God met me in the mountaintop. He met me in a place I never expected. It was my very first missions trip to the Dominican Republic. And on that missions trip was when I fully opened my eyes to see that I was living in a foggy cloud. I don't know how to explain it. But it's like on top of those mountains, all of a sudden everything was clear. On that mission trip, I was met by God. And I was meant to be a blessing towards others, but God used it to actually bless me. The mountains reminded me that I am small, but never unseen. The ocean reminded me that His place, His plans are deeper than my pain. I stood in awe when I was actually able to climb that mountain. They call it the Prayer Mountain in the DR. Because of sickle cell, altitudes are not my best friends. I've gone to Colorado twice, and one of the last times proved that altitudes would send me into a crisis that would only leave after going back to normal, altitude level, that my oxygen would not be impacted. Anyways, so the fact that I climbed that mountain, the fact that I hiked that mountain was in itself already a win, because with sickle cell I never thought that I would be able to do that, but God knew that I would be able to do that. And so I did. And I stood in awe and realized I don't have to carry everything. I am not the planner of my life. I'm not the orchestrator. I am the daughter who is loved by her beloved Heavenly Father. I am the loved daughter of the one who is and forever will be. In that place, I began to breathe again. I didn't have to explain why I was still hurting. I just had to be. Guys, in the midst of me telling you this story, I just want to make one thing clear. Divorce is not a joke. It's not a meme. It's not a punchline in a reel. Divorce is devastating. It's sacred ground that's been shattered. I'm not sharing this to glorify divorce. I'm sharing this to normalize the conversation, so people who've been through it don't feel like they have to hide behind shame or silence. Because while God hates divorce, He does not hate the divorced. Hear me when I say that. He does not hate the divorced. He still loves me just as much as He still loves you, even if you have gone through divorce. And Jesus Himself acknowledges that there are real reasons it may happen. In Matthew 19:9, Jesus said, "I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another woman, commits adultery." That's not an invitation. It's an acknowledgement. That betrayal, unfaithfulness, abuse, those are not small things to God. And if you've had to make a very painful and difficult decision to walk away, friend, I want you to know God sees you. He does not abandon you. He doesn't disqualify you. You are still worthy, still loved, and still held. I just had to, just add that in there in case you feel that this is way too polished. My story is far from polished. That mission trip did not fix me, but it awakened me. I started remembering who I was before I got lost in the we, which it happens. I learned to love my independence again, and sometimes perhaps a little too much. I reconnected with my faith, not as a performance, but at times more so as a survival. Because just as we need the bread every single day, we need God daily. And I also started to find joy, not in people's approval, but in God's presence. I at times stopped, I started going to coffee shops, which I didn't used to be a huge coffee drinker until I started working mornings. And then after I went to the Dominican Republic, then I was really a huge coffee drinker. But I would go to a coffee shop alone and actually find so much joy in that. I also found joy in the most weird things, like crying in my car and still feel so held by God. I also found joy by just being around friends who actually took all of me, not just the polished part, or not just the the fixed. And sometimes people ask me, like, would you go back and change it all? I honestly would say no. I grew so much from that experience. That version of me, the broken one, she found an intimacy with God that the whole version of me, and I use whole in quotations because no one is fully whole. Anyways, but the broken version of me found an intimacy with God that the whole version never knew. That version of me, she learned how to pray again, how to rest again, how to choose joy. Joy that only comes from God. And even though I have said, I think it was maybe episode 5, that we're not broken, we're unfolding. But if I'm completely honest, there's a little bit of brokenness in all of us. And even though I know I'm broken, I have to remind myself and remember, I am not ashamed, because God does beautiful things with broken pieces. And next week, I won't be telling the story alone. Part of God doing beautiful things with broken pieces is that He brings people together in the most crazy ways. And I get to tell you guys a little bit about that. Next week, you guys get to meet my husband, the man who met me at one of my lowest points and also one of my highest points. And our story is not a fairy tale ending by any means, but is a story that includes God's redemption. It's truly God's redemptive story. Like I've shared before, this podcast is my testimony. And when we tell our testimony, it's for God's glory, and it's not for our fame necessarily. I am a vessel, and I am here to be used by God. And my husband feels similar, so he will be here sharing some embarrassing parts of our dating journey. But yeah, he's lovely. He, like I said before, he didn't come in my life saving me, because he could not save me if he tried. But he came along loving a woman that God chose to put in his path, that also loves God, and that God was rebuilding at the same time that he was rebuilding him. So I can't wait to share with you guys next week. Until then, just remember, you are not too broken to be loved. God does beautiful things with broken pieces. No estás demasiado rota para ser amada. Dios hace cosas hermosas com piezas rotas. Você não está quebrada demais para ser amada. Deus faz coisas lindas com pedaços quebrados. This is Joy in the Journey with your host, Jaja Fortuna. Thank you so much for letting me pause and feel today. Thank you for letting me be me. And I'll see you in the next episode where love meets healing. Ciao. Adios. Bye.
There's joy in the journey, peace in the climb.